Okay, good morning, everybody. Wow. I'm going to get things kicked off here. My name is Sue Doe. I'm the director of Tilt. It's just so exciting to see everybody here. I know that people will be streaming in for the next many moments, and that's perfectly okay. But we do want to get some things going here so that we can launch on time. I hope that everybody is feeling excited and ready to take some things in for the next couple of days. You've put in a heck of a semester, and we're just so happy that you're here, and we're hoping that you'll be able to really enjoy this and learn from this, and also just take a moment to kind of take care of yourself a bit. These are difficult weeks that we've been living through, I think, and we need to be really conscious of how we show up here and the ways in which we are mindful of ourselves and each other. So with that thought in mind, I'd like to kick this off with our very important land acknowledgement. So here we go, folks. Thank you.
Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples.
This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native nations.
We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it.
As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed.
CSU is a land-grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion.
And significantly, that our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon.
This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment.
Thank you so much. I want to welcome you to the Tilt Summer Conference. I want to begin by just acknowledging my many colleagues here who have made this happen, and I know it's premature a little bit, but you saw what's involved out there, and maybe just a little round of applause for the Tilt Summer. Thank you. And if you're looking for Tilt folks, just look for these adorable and bright orange shirts. We can be found just about anywhere. So thank you again for being here again. My name is Sue Doe, and I do want to share with you a few of our logistics for today. So hopefully you can find restrooms. They are right through the double doors, and I think if you head to your left, you'll find some, and then probably you know that you can just go up this way and find a few more. There is an elevator to the second level if you need it, right out here. The conference program is available on the summer conference webpage if you would like to see that in its totality. There is also a large printed schedule by the check-in table if you want to take a photo of it. Charging stations are available, and if you need some help finding them, just look for a person in an orange shirt. Lunch will take place right here in the Laurie Student Center Theater. Technology will involve Zoom links and recordings, and we want you to know that the presentations that you hear today will be available later. I do have one logistical question and a request of all of you, and that is when we do the Q&A portion of our morning after our keynote speaker has spoken, I would like to ask you to raise your hand and a microphone will come to you. We're going to actually request that no one speak without a microphone. So we all think we can be heard and that we can project, but alas, we cannot. And so out of kindness to all, we want to bear in mind that a microphone is available. I did want to mention that we have one change to the program. You will note that Jen Darr's session at 10:45 this morning in room 312, which has to do with faculty success, had to be canceled. Jen's under the weather today. So we're sorry that she can't be here, but she has promised that she'll come back on another day and present her session for all of us in some sort of a workshop setting, and we'll greatly look forward to that. We want to make sure that everybody goes to something at that time, though, and there are 3 other options, and so please take a look and see what else might work for you. So I'm just going to kick this off with a little bit of information about what Universal Design for Learning is. We've certainly probably have some degree of familiarity. This is not, Universal Design for Learning is not something new. The CAST organization, which is a 40-year-old pioneering nonprofit in educational research and development that created the Universal Design for Learning, has been around for 40 years. So they are committed to providing the teaching and educational community with tools that are needed to empower learners, schools, and universities. And you'll hear more references probably to CAST and to the basic principles that guide their work, which include engagement, which is the why of learning, representation, which is the what of learning, and action and expression, or the how of learning. So we'll be exploring these categories and more over the next couple of days. As you know, I hope, Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is based on principles that empower everyone to have agency over their own learning. It allows educators and learners to set clear goals, to anticipate environmental barriers, to create meaningful options, and to fully embrace human variability. We at TILT want to make it clear that we believe we are all somewhere on a continuum of understanding and application of UDL principles. You've all been working in your classrooms to make them accessible, engaging, and inviting through a variety of means, and so you are well on your way. Your daily classroom practices are allowing students to feel welcome and valued. We will have opportunities throughout our careers to advance how we are making our classes inviting, and today is one such opportunity, today and tomorrow. And we invite you to take to take in the opportunities in these next 2 days, to think about the steps that you might take, the bite-sized pieces that you will undertake to make a commitment to UDL. We know, and that we suppose that you concur, that there is no such thing as a perfectly accessible classroom or workplace. Only classrooms and workplaces that are on the road of continuous improvement. We hope you'll figure out a set of steps that you can undertake and a timeline that is reasonable. Then know that there are students who are eager to learn and also eager to help you about what makes teaching and learning work for them. Invite them into the problem solving. Of course, UDL goes beyond accessibility. It is a framework for creating learning environments that support all learners. By emphasizing multiple means of engagement, representation, and action, UDL fosters inclusive, student-centered learning experiences that benefit everyone, not just those with disabilities. Now, of course, many of you have heard that this summer conference intersects with the role that we play in the current accessibility reform on our campus in response to new state and federal accessibility laws, which require us to make our digital content accessible. Several of the sessions deal directly with how to go about doing that. And additional tools are available to support our community, including the Accessibility by Design website for tutorials, Anthology Ally for Canvas, and Site Improve for websites. We've been encouraged to encourage you to email atrc@colostate.edu for help with these resources. But we really want the emphasis on in these next 2 days to be less about compliance and more about ethics, less about following the rules and more about doing the things that we all know we want to do and are aiming to do, and that I have the highest confidence in all of you that you are doing your very best at and will continue to develop. I want to mention to you that we have a conference reflection form that is sitting at your table. We have not enough copies probably for every single person at your table, but if you would like to take a look and locate it on your table, we are encouraging you to use it throughout the conference. You can either use the hard copy form or the QR code to download a copy to your device. And we are recommending that you utilize this just to sort of keep notes to yourself, and help you, remember what you hope to take from each of the sessions that you attend. The first page of that reflection form aligns key UDL practices with our own teaching effectiveness framework. The checklist gives you an opportunity to see where you're already using UDL practices in your teaching. While the terminology might be new to some of you, you've probably been implementing many of the strategies already. So, I want to mention that UDL recommends that we promote individual and collective reflection. And so what you'll see is that on pages 4 through 7 of that handout, there's prompts and spaces to record notes, write down key takeaways, resources, colleague connections. On page 8, there's a conference reflection and UDL implementation planning form. Please join us on Thursday, tomorrow, from 3:30 to 4:30 right here at the very end of our conference to reflect on the conference and come back to this document and think about making plans for the upcoming fall semester. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce TILT's new book kits. We have 6 of our favorite titles ready for you to read and discuss with colleagues. These books and kits are on display in the Kindness Lounge. If you've not yet seen the Kindness Lounge, you're going to want to see it. So when you head out the doors here and go to your right, you'll see down in the sunken area, sunken lounge, that there are book kits there. And you can peruse these books when you drop away your giveaway tickets into a prize box. We will be giving away several copies of these books over the next 2 days. With that in mind, I want to make sure that you are keeping track of your little tickets. So as you're going along, we want you to collect tickets for the closing session and the giveaway at 3:30 on tomorrow afternoon. Be sure to bring your coupons for the giveaways. You must be present to win. You may be asking, how do I get tickets for the giveaways? Well, you were given a ticket, I hope, when you picked up your name tag. And there will be opportunities throughout today and tomorrow to win tickets throughout the conference. Remember to rip the tickets in half and put the ticket portion in the box in the Kindness Lounge. That's where the drawing will be drawn from. Be sure to keep the coupon, your half, as we'll be calling numbers, not names. And we are giving away books from the Tilt book clubs, as well as an assortment of other items like loop earplugs, a camping chair, and a few other things. So. At the Kindness Lounge, you'll find a number of things that will be interesting to you, and we hope you'll be kind to yourself and to each other, and that's an invitation to do so. We want you to relax, to meet colleagues, to browse the giveaway prizes, the new Tilt Book Club kits, to reflect on the conference, or just take a break. And now it's time for our first book giveaway. So a lucky winner will receive one of the books from the new Tilt Book Club kits right now. So what I'd like for you to do is feel under the seat of your chair right in the front and see if by any chance you are a winner right now of the first book club giveaway. hilariously, I think that perhaps our book club ticket, unless somebody is raising their hand, unless somebody has mysteriously found one, I suspect that our ticket may be in a table that is currently unoccupied. So if anybody wants to make a mad dash, we see who really wants a book, don't we? We see who really wants a book. I see my composition friends. They know a good book when they see one. I see Dan Baker. I mean, these people they know when they're getting something. You're getting clues from certain members of the Tilt team. Hopefully we'll have a winner here soon. I mean, for all of the effort that's been expended, I feel like I have to give it to Todd Rucker. Okay, it is Todd Rucker. Okay, because, yes, all right, Todd. Todd, come up here and grab your book. Todd is the director of our university composition program, so thank you, Todd, for going to the extra effort, and you too, Kylie, for really and you too, Grant, going over there and knocking yourself out at that table. So thank you. All right, you will not want to miss this today at 3:30. From 3:30 to 4:30 at the Ramskeller. We will have appetizers, conversation, and a smidge of fun. Now, we will have to ask you to buy your own beer, but we will provide the treat. So hopefully you'll stick around long enough to participate with us in that. I will tell you that it was a rousing event last year. So you don't know what you're missing if you don't come to the Ramskeller at 3:30. So with that, I see more people coming in, and that's great. I want to welcome you all. We're now going to take just a few minutes to give our speaker time to get set up. We'll have about 10 minutes, so if you need to make a run to the bathroom or want to get a refill on your coffee, this is the time to do it, and then we will resume at 9 a.m. sharp. And with that, again, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming to this event. We're happy to have you here, and really just want to encourage you to have a wonderful, wonderful time for these 2 days. So thanks for being here. Okay, folks. I think we finally have the giant urn of coffee, which we know is the number one priority. And if you were forced to go buy a cup of coffee while you were waiting, just let me know. I'll be happy to comp you for that. But thank you again for being here. It is now my opportunity and my great honor, really, to introduce our guest speaker. Lillian Nave is the faculty and educational development specialist for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning for Student Success at Appalachian State Hickory campus in North Carolina. A former art historian, Lillian also teaches first-year seminar courses in intercultural competence and connects her students virtually with students in Europe, Africa, and Asia. She is the creator and host of the Think UDL podcast, which has over 100,000 global downloads. She will be providing a lot of wonderful information to us, and I will just add that I've learned just recently, and just a few minutes ago, that she's the proud mom also of 3 college graduates, 2 sons with associate degrees on their way to bachelor degrees, and 1 daughter who's already put her bachelor's degree to work in biology. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Lillian Nave.
Hello, great. There we go. Hi, it is so wonderful to be here. I'm really glad that you're investing as a whole university in universal design for learning. And to see faculty come here the day after grades are due Yeah, and spending a full 2 days jumping into what can I do? How can I teach better? What can I bring to my students is so amazing. I've had such an amazingly warm welcome to come here that I'm really excited. And your Tilt folks here are absolutely amazing. I don't know if you realize how lucky you are. Yeah. You are very lucky. You have such a big team. First of all, your university has invested in this, and it's really, really exciting. So when they asked me to come, and if I could maybe give a nod to the teaching framework, I was like, sure, I'll give a nod to it. Well, once I dug in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It really relates so much to UDL, as you see in your handout. And I also made my own handouts, which are eerily similar, we found, that we did this apart from each other. But you'll see near the end of my talk, I'll be looking at one-to-one correlations. So that's what this is. It's on cardstock, and you've got lots of resources there. And the other handout that you should take a look at or have handy has the Universal Design for Learning guidelines on it. But on the back is something that may be helpful. It's got the QR codes for many of the things we'll be doing, including the slides, but also I'll be doing some poll everywhere. So if you have a mobile phone, you can use that to, it's the top middle, to engage in some of the polls, but they'll also be on the screen. So that's my little housekeeping. Of course, the other handout is on there, as well as some more resources for you. So, if you want to have that, here's the QR code. I love to have everyone have the slides in multiple formats because I'll also have lots of embedded links. So if you wanted to further look at something that I had just looked at on the last slide, you can do that. And you'll have that with you now whenever you would like. It's also, again, the first QR code on the back, so if you can't see the one on the screen, you've got it on your table. And so it also tells me if at any point during the talk this morning, you're diving in, looking at your phone, I know you're just diving into the materials in depth. So I'm happy about that. Okay, so now you know where all the resources are. For today's talk or keynote, you've got a couple opportunities about how to interact, including individual reflection. So if you wanted to go further in those slides, have a look, go through them, click on some things, have fun with it. They'll also be at your tables, small group conversations, so I'll show a couple slides to have you talk if you'd like. And then also that anonymous polling using Poll Everywhere. The second QR code is how you can access those. The questions will automatically pop up when we get to that part of the presentation. And I know that there are folks online that are joining us, and so that will also be a time where I'll get that our folks online will also be participating with us at the same time, synchronously. So, there we go. So a little bit more about who I am. I appreciate so much your introduction. But I think it's really important to know who's in the room, and that's how we're going to start today. So last name like cave, Nave, not Nave, although that I wouldn't think I'd have to explain it, but it's a common mispronunciation. And I have 2 sons who are in the midst of their college. They have their associates, and then a daughter who's finished up with her biology degree, and we're hoping for a job this week, actually. I just talked to her last night, FaceTimed, she's in negotiations, so that's exciting for us. And so I'm a partner, I'm a sister, I have a brother who's 4 years older than me in Roanoke, Virginia, who's a lawyer. And so I pass everything through him. I'm an aunt and a friend, and I'm a fierce friend. So don't mess with my friends. I will take care of them. I'm also a podcaster. I love listening to people, and having this podcast has brought so much joy in my life. So I get to talk to people who really do what you do. They love teaching. They're good at it. They want to make lives better. And it's so wonderful to talk to these people who are invested in teaching and learning. So I love connecting people and ideas. And that's what I hope I'll be able to do this morning with you. I also love hiking. These are my beloved Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. And I don't do that anymore after I broke my ankle hiking downhill one time a couple years ago. But that taught me also a lot about what having a temporary impairment, where I couldn't drive, I couldn't walk, and for a series of months I had to rehab so that I could be here on the stage and do a little jig. But it's also the place where I find I get a lot of inspiration. So I've redone my whole grading my whole grading scheme one time for my first year seminar on the hike. It just all happened in my head, right? And then at the end, I was able to kind of put it down. So those might be also the places that you find are also important for you in thinking about your teaching. And I'm a faculty developer, a faculty and educational developer at Hickory. Appalachian State now has 2 campuses, and I moved from the main campus down to our newest campus. We have about 200 students, and we're growing. Our main campus has 20,000. So we have to have kind of many hats and be a jack of all trades down there, and I'm really excited to work with our new faculty because most of them haven't taught before. They're coming in as practitioners of residence there. And finally, I'm a CAST national faculty member, which means CAST, who created the UDL guidelines, I partner with them and go to lots of universities and talk to folks about UDL. So now you know kind of all those different areas I'm going to bring in, hopefully, for today. And here's the next part. Who are you? So you're at tables. You might not know everybody at your table. And what I'd like for you to do is get to know those people at your table with your name, your hometown, and what your department or discipline is. My answers are on the board. I come mostly from Clearwater, Florida. And as you heard, I was formerly an art historian. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to get to know your tables because you'll be talking to them later. Go ahead. I'm going to give you a 1-minute warning. 1-minute warning. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. What a wonderful group. All right, how many of you, can you raise your hand, did you learn something new about somebody? Look at that. All right, you can't deny you've learned something today. So already, it's been valuable. So what we're going to do today, 2 parts, is talk about universal design for learning, and then also how UDL can help Colorado State University fulfill its mission and values. Those are the 2 kind of heady things that I'm hoping that we can talk about or go through today and learn together. So the first part is, what is universal design for learning? And I'm going to start off by asking a question. So on your handouts, you have the Poll Everywhere, which is the top middle QR code, or you can use this QR code that's on the screen right now. And when I change to the next slide, it's going to give you another option to use the QR code, but the first question will appear once I go into that next slide. So also you'll have some other ways to do that without the QR code. But here is the first question. You can use this QR code at the top as well, which is, I wanted to know who's in the room and how familiar you are. So how familiar are you with UDL? If you would like, you can also answer this question using the web and go to pollev.com/NaveUDL. Or you can do it on your phone and send a text to 37607 and send a Nave UDL. So there's multiple ways to get to this poll, is what I'm saying. And the question is, how familiar are you with UDL? And is it, I've never heard of UDL, I know about UDL, but I've not implemented them. I've dabbled, you could say, in UDL in my area, or I use UDL all the time in my area, whether that's teaching or in your department or whatever you're doing here. Or I could probably host your podcast, Lillian. That's what I want to know. Okay, so there we go. So let's see what our responses are. We have 104 responses already. All right, and it looks like a good number of you, 37%, have dabbled in your area. That's great to hear. And I'm really glad that there's a big push here at CSU. And then we've got another 30% that use it often. Great. Because there'll be some times here today that you might be able to share what you've done in your area. But then a good 1 out of 5 of you haven't had a chance yet to implement them. So just know that we're all coming from different places, and now I need to talk to one person who's going to co-host with me on my podcast. Yes, we are ready. Okay, so you're not alone, is what I'm saying. You're not alone. There's somebody else in this room who is exactly at the same stage as you are. So that's good. So the next question is, what about this meal? Would you eat this meal? It's sort of a Tex-Mex, Southwest kind of Mexican lasagna with beef, cheese, pasta, noodles, corn, onions, taco seasoning, black beans, and tomatoes. And so I'm wondering if this would be something you would eat. If, let's say, I invited you over to my house for dinner and I had this on the menu, is this something that you would eat? And so here's your chance to answer. It should automatically pop up on your phone, and you can give me just a simple yes or no, whether you would eat this. If you've already done the first question, it should pop up, but if not, your QR codes are on your table as well. Okay. Let's see. Who would come over to my house and eat this? I'm guessing a majority, but we'll see. Oh, good. Yes. Thank you. I put a lot of time into cooking, and my kids hate it, so I really love it when adults come over, and I can cook for you. That's great. So about 7 out of 10 of you would have a good time at my dinner party. But there's still about 28% of you who would not. So that's a lot of people, actually. And that might make it a little awkward if we're having dinner and you don't eat the food that I make. I kind of worked really hard to make, and I learned a lot about it. I kind of sourced all of those ingredients, by the way. Took a long time researching them. Why is it that somebody might decline to eat this meal? And so at your table groups, I would love to get your ideas, and in a minute I'm also going to pull the poll everywhere up so the folks online could answer this, and then you can also do that. So at your table groups, why would someone decline to eat this meal? So as you can see, there's a lot of reasons. Could be a vegetarian, could be vegan, could have some intolerances. You might not like tomatoes, dairy, could be full. Yeah, it's corn is a no-no. I like that. Corn no-no. I haven't had that before, but I like corn no-no. What a great group. Could be fasting, right? Gluten, or glutes. I see that up there. So it's good. Could be bad for your glutes. That could work. Spices. There were some spicy breakfast offerings. I had to get some water after this morning. So, okay, so there's a lot of reasons, right, why somebody may not want to eat the meal that I lovingly sourced, prepared, in fact, studied like 6 years in order to make food like that, by the way. And then I prepare it, I wrap it up really nicely. But then there's some folks that just aren't going to eat that food. And why is that? Well, because people are variable. People have different dietary restrictions. They also have different cultural and religious prohibitions too. So there are lots of reasons why somebody may decide that that's not a meal that they could eat, even after I've lovingly prepared it and invited people to my house to enter into my world of Tex-Mex lasagna, and then they've decided that that's not something that they can do. Well, that's because, again, people are different, and we can see that as an analogy for universal design for learning. You probably saw where this is coming from. And that is, all of our students and all of our learners are very different. And so the first analogy I want to start with is this buffet analogy about universal design for learning, which is that the one part that created the barrier for my dinner party is the same kind of thing that might create the barrier for your classrooms. And that was the last step of me throwing it all together and baking it in the oven. If I had kept all of those ingredients out in a buffet, then every student could choose to have beans instead of meat, corn tortilla instead of flour. Don't take those onions, and corn no problem, right? Corn no problem. So, and that is the kind of thing that we can do, is we realize, or we try to see what the barrier might have been and take away those barriers. And what it ends up doing for me in that analogy, and by the way, no analogy is perfect, but in that analogy, that actually helped me because I didn't have to do that final step of putting it in the oven and baking it. I still had to do all the prep. I still had to do the things that I was going to do anyway, but then I just designed a way for students to have some choice, or for my diners to have some choice and flexibility in order to finish that meal or to partake in it. And the same can be true for our classrooms, is that we can kind of change that last step and offer some ways that don't create a barrier for our students. So that's our first analogy. But the second analogy is about flying, the pilot analogy. And this is a true story, and this is a story that's often told by David Rose, who's one of the founders of UDL, and I have a reference to it in just a minute. But this was the true story about what happened in the United States in the 1950s, 1952, and there was a problem with the Air Force in that the continuous loss of airplanes because of either pilot error or technical errors or any number of things. They couldn't quite figure it out. But the US Air Force had a problem. And so they invited a researcher to try to figure out what they could do, because they looked at, is it the pilots? No, these are the best of the best that we have. So it's not that the pilots, it's not the pilot error all the time. Well, what about the instructors? And they looked at the instructors and said, no, these are our absolute top pilots. They become very good instructors. We're not sure why we're not progressing in this field. And so this researcher decided that what had happened at high speeds was that some of the pilots couldn't reach all the yoke, the buttons, the things that were needed to reach in the cockpit in those milliseconds that they needed to reach them. And so he said, okay, well, let's figure out, like, what's the average of all of these pilots, and we'll build the cockpit so that it's kind of built on that average, and the pilots can reach everything. And so he took 10 measurements of all these 4,000 pilots to try to figure out, like, what's going to be the best cockpit, the best environment that we can create, so that will lessen most of these errors if possible. And so these are all the measurements: the height, shoulders, chest, weight, hips, legs, reach, torso, neck, and thigh. And so my question to you in your table groups and also online, how many of those 4,000 pilots do you think met the average for those measurements? So in your table groups, what do you think? How many of those, here's the question, what's your best guess out of 4,000? These are excellent answers. Can I have my statistics faculty raise their hands? My statistics faculty? We don't have? Math faculty? Math faculty? Okay, all right, okay. Spoilers in the middle. Okay. All right, hey, this is great. We are using our noggins this morning. So I think 3,500 is our highest, 500, 10%, maybe half. These are some great answers, but it looks like the predominant answer there is 0, because the more people that put that, the larger it gets. But I can see that there's definitely a large variety of answers here. Well, as you might have guessed, the actual answer is 0. The math and statistics are vindicated, right? Vindicated, right? Why is that? Well, because there is not an average. If we try to build for the average, we're building for nobody. And so what happened is they just realized that what they needed to do in the cockpit was to make everything adjustable and flexible. That means you can move the seat upwards or back or higher or lower. You can move the yoke back and forth. You can be able to adjust the cockpit to the size of the individual. And that is why you in your cars today have adjustable seats. That comes from this innovation in the Air Force in the 1950s as to why when you get in your car, you're not, or when let's say your teenager gets in the car to drive, and then I'm riding like that, I need to change it. So that is the myth of average. And it's because this isn't true. We don't have an average. But we've been making educational settings built for the average for decades. People are highly variable. The averages do not effectively measure the human talent or potential. Each person has a unique collection of strengths and weaknesses, and learning environments designed for averages are designed for nobody. If you want to see a much longer, more beautiful rendition of that story, you can click on that link later on. Todd Rose gives a great example of that. It's an 18-minute TED Talk. So just like every person has a jagged physical profile, like those pilots, and also an interestingly diverse palette for our buffet analogy, every student is unique and has a jagged learning profile. So you'll have students that come in more or less prepared than others, that have great memory or working memory, some that have challenges as far as dyslexia or dysgraphia. Everybody is different. So we cannot make a classroom for the average because the average does not exist. So those are my two analogies as to why we need universal design for learning, and why it's so helpful and appropriate, of course, for the college classroom. I'm sure you're seeing quite a diverse group of students here at CSU. So the basic principles of UDL are threefold, and that's on one side of the handout. So you've got 3 different areas, 3 different columns. It's kind of overwhelming, so I'm simplifying, and I'm just going to go into some small sections of it. But it's 3 areas. One is engagement. It is a 3-legged stool. If you take away one of these legs, you don't have UDL anymore. So the first is engagement, which is how do we motivate our students? How do we keep them coming back after spring break when their brains stayed on their ski trip and didn't come back? And engage them throughout the semester, engage them in learning. It's the why of learning. The central part is representation, and that has a lot to do with multiple means. So the fact that you have multiple handouts, and we've had digital copies, and we've got great tech and AV, that we have multiple ways to get that information, that's the representation. How does it get in their heads? And are you choosing multiple things, resources like books and articles and podcasts and videos and H5P or whatever sort of voice thread sort of things that you might have with your learning management system. So how does that information get in our students' heads? And that is where the accessibility part lies. Many people will think that UDL is only accessibility. That is not, but it does live in that central column. And then finally, action and expression is, well, how do they know what they know? How do we know that they've learned what we've offered to them? So that's about assessment or action and expression. So that's, in general, those 3 areas. Each one is equally important for universal design for learning. And here's the overall list of considerations, is what we're calling them. But that's just in general. So now you know what UDL is in general, and we're going to see why it matters. So there we did it. Wow, we're already halfway through, except the second half's a lot longer. The second part is, how can UDL help Colorado State University fulfill its mission and values? So I looked. And you're like, of course, our mission values. I know them like the back of my hand. Well, I went and looked, found them, studied them, and I see that you say we want, our guiding principles are that our institutional success depends on how well we welcome, value, and affirm all members of the CSU community. And 3 of those guiding principles I'm going to focus on. There are 5, but there are 3 that I wanted to look at today, and that's inclusion and respect and service, because I think they're directly linked to UDL and your teaching. And so inclusion, it's stated on CSU's guiding principles, is that we create and nurture inclusive environments and welcome, value, and affirm all members of our community, including their various identities, skills, ideas, talents, and contributions. So you can see exactly why that resonates with me as a UDL person. It's your who. Those are the people that are in your community. The second is respect. We honor the inherent dignity of all people within an environment where we're committed to freedom of expression, critical discourse, and the advancement of knowledge. That's your what. That's your environment and how you're creating that space for students to come in to learn. And finally, service. We're responsible individually and collectively to give of our time, talents, and resources to promote the well-being of each other and the development of our local, regional, and global communities. So, you might have guessed, that's your how. So we're going to look at those three things and see how UDL plays into them. So first is the who, all members of our community and their variable selves. The second is the what, our inclusive environment. And the third, of course, is the how we're going to do that, through service, through promoting well-being. So our goal is to examine how diverse our students are here, because those are the people that are your who, and so are we. And through that lens of learner variability, address the needs of the whole student through UDL-inspired design and align with our who, what, and how values here at CSU. So let's start with the who. Who attends Colorado State? I looked up College Factual. I also looked on your common data set as well, but I liked the graphics here, so I pulled these. All of the graphics, by the way, on the slides have alt text to make them accessible. But you'll notice that this is just the student age diversity breakdown, with about 28% age 2021, 27% is 18 to 19, and the other 17, about 20 to 24. So a good number of traditionally aged college students, but you also have some non-traditionally aged college students at CSU. Here's your geographic breakdown. Mostly Colorado, strangely. You have a lot of folks from Colorado, but also almost all of the other states, but apparently you don't like Minnesota, I guess. Or Missouri. So you get folks from all over. My best friend's son is a student, undergrad, and now a grad student here from North Carolina. Here's your male-female diversity, 53% women, which is actually more diverse than most colleges that are at 60% female and 40% male. And here's your racial ethnic demographics, with 70% white, a good 15% Hispanic. Next is multi-ethnic, and then smaller version of Asian, international, Black, or African American. And I have, this is just kind of a snapshot as to what you have here at Colorado State. So my question is, what's missing? I don't think that was a comprehensive list. So in your table groups, what other diversity categories are we missing when we look at what's on the big spreadsheets? Go ahead and talk in your table groups, and then I'll pull up a poll everywhere for folks to add that to. If you'd like to add some of your answers, you can put them on the poll everywhere. Wow. So, as I suspected, you know a lot more about your students, too. More than on a dashboard. By the way, it's still me. I just took off my jacket, okay? Whew. It's still just me. Uh-oh, here we go. So the largest one being disability. Look at that different religious backgrounds, regions, physical abilities, LGBT, income, for a big first generation. So neurodivergent, I see up there, gender nonconforming, rural versus urban. Oh, that's often overlooked. We see that at Appalachian State big time as well. Pell Grant recipient. So this is a really diverse campus with a large student body. So knowing that our students are so variable, how can we do that? How can we design for that variability? Well, we are going to, we got some good help. The TEF is going to help us do that. But variability is the norm. Can you raise your hand if you've had any students that match something that's on the list? For those of you playing at home, that's everybody. Everybody raised their hand. Yeah, so variability is the norm. That is our mantra in UDL. So you have lots of different kinds of students. So lots of different areas. One of the things that I saw up there was neurodiversity. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that as well because it's one of those invisible disabilities or invisible differences. And there are things that we can do to plan for those students as well. But there's so many things we cannot see when we look at our students. And those college factual and common data sets are often the things that we can see. But there's so much more to our students. So really briefly, neurodiversity refers to the variations in mental functions that may make it difficult to learn or interact under traditional expectations. But this is the neurodiversity symbol, which is the multicolored infinity symbol. That's been used more and more often lately. And in neurodiversity, you have things like autism, Tourette's, cognitive processing disorders. I would love for ADHD to be retermed VAST, which is variable attention stimulus trait. It's been knocked around, but I don't think it's going to go into the DSM anytime soon. I still don't like having disorder on things. But things like dyslexia and dyscalculia, chronic mental health issues like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. So lots of things are under that neurodiversity umbrella. And just like we have various strengths and challenges for every learner, a neurodivergent learner is going to have an even spikier profile. So that might mean they have incredible gifts, really, in memory or something else, or some sort of function, but they also might need more support in other areas. So the darker gray line just shows what might be the neurotypical student, and the lighter gray is just how that variation changes when we're looking at our neurodivergent students. So when we have, we're looking at flexibility, and then we're looking at flexibility in greater and greater ways, and variability in our students. So we think about 11% of graduates are considered neurodivergent, but about 30% of our undergrads are neurodivergent. So what happens? They don't finish. A lot of our students don't finish. We also think that there are a lot more that don't report their neurodivergence. Women especially are underdiagnosed and also underreport. And of course, accommodating students who are neurodivergent is also covered under the ADA. So all important things for us to keep in mind. And I had the wonderful opportunity to talk to a neurodivergent faculty member. And you might recognize this one because I had a great conversation on the podcast.
And when I was in my 20s, I thought everybody thought in pictures. I didn't know that other people think differently. Well, I've been learning more and more about how people think. And there's people like me who are object visualizers, think in pictures. And then there's the visual spatial, more mathematical pattern thinkers. And then, of course, there's the people that think in words. And I'm getting more and more interested in how at work these skills can be used in a complementary manner. And being a visual thinker helped me with animals, because if you want to understand an animal, it doesn't think in words. You know, its thoughts are going to be pictures, smells, touch sensations, things that it hears. Animals are very sensitive to tone of voice. People don't realize that when you yell at cattle, they know you're mad at them.
This was a highlight, by the way, to get to talk to Temple Grandin, and I can't believe that I got the email back, like that she talked to me. So that was several years ago, I think before she wrote the book about visual thinking, and it was a wonderful conversation. But I've been talking to a lot of neurodivergent students and neurodivergent faculty too, about just how we see the world differently, and how can we plan for that variability. So knowing that it's not just our students, it's also our coworkers, our colleagues, our other faculty members, our staff that are part of this variability.
And when I
So there we go. That's number one. We found out the who. All members of our community, faculty, staff, students, learner variability, because we're wild and wonderful together. And the second part is the what. We're going to look at this inclusive environment. And for this, I wanted to look at two things, which is how we conceive of the environment that we're creating here and how we create the environment. So the slide, the picture you have on the screen is one of my favorites by an underwater photographer named Nicholas Samaras, and it is of a Greek Paralympian, Antonios Zapatakis. In this photograph, we see how this Paralympic athlete is kind of a little bit out of his element because he's in his street clothes, but he's in the pool, and you can see his wheelchair next to him. And this speaks to me about the power of environment, because if you put someone in the right environment, then they can show you their incredible strengths. If you take them out of the right environment, or you create barriers in that environment, then you really can't see that human flourishing. And so, Antonios Zapatakis is a gold medal winner, a Paralympian, world champion swimmer. And so if you put him in a race, he's going to certainly blow me out of the water, I will tell you that, and most everybody as a Paralympian. But if he's in his wheelchair in the built environment, then that is often disabling to him. That's a social model of disability. So how we conceive of an environment is really important. So I have a few things to say about that before we talk about creating that environment. So the social model is what we're talking about here, is that it's not an attribute of the individual, but rather it exists in the social environment. And that's usually the second thing people come up with, because the medical model is that we need to cure someone of whatever that disability is. We have to get rid of the autism. We have to get rid of the ADHD, right? And that would be the medical model, that they're not normal and need to be made more normal. But the social model is that this is fine, we just need to work on our environment. The disability model is similar. It's that disability is like biodiversity or neurodiversity, just part of human variation. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about that, this is a great cartoon about the social model of disability, where you see it's really how you conceive of that environment. That one is disabled by the environment rather than you are disabled in needing some things. So, and there's a couple links there if you're interested in finding out more about that. So conceiving of that environment is very important. But how did that happen? How did we come to those ideas? And I'm going to take you on hopefully a little journey about how difference, or how we are just all variable, has ended up in many insidious ways as some sort of discrimination, and so that we can be aware of that in our context. So first I want to show one of my favorite headlines, from the Associated Press, which I know you got a great baseball team here. I didn't know if you had any amphibious pitchers, but they're really great, fantastic for your team. And I can just imagine the editors of this, like the backroom conversation. By the way, this on the screen you'll see amphibious pitcher makes debut. And it shows two photographs of the same pitcher throwing once with his right arm and once with his left. And in the back room, I'm thinking, all right, what do you think? You think amphibious? Yeah, this guy could throw from his left and his right. Yeah, amphibious pitcher. Is that the right word? Yeah, print it. It is not the right word. It's just a little joke. So I want to ask you, are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? Are you ambidextrous? Or are you amphibious? And everyone at home can play this game as well. We have 4 frogs. There's always a frog in the group. All right, 77%. Okay, that's about the amount of people who would eat my Mexican lasagna. So come on over, righties. I'll give you a fork. And all you lefties are going to have to sit on the edge of the table so you don't bludgeon us with your elbow, like my daughter. So we've got about 14% are left-handed, 75% right-handed. All right, so it's a majority, for sure. Right-handed is the majority. But for a long time, being left-handed was really problematic. And let me talk about that. So on the screen now is a example of an illuminated manuscript from about 1383. And it shows a medieval scribe writing with a quill pen in his right hand. And with the tools of the inkwell that you see and the reed knife, European scribes in the Western world needed to be right-handed so the ink could dry without smudging. And these scribes also became those people who were the keepers of knowledge. Like, that was a pretty high position, was someone who could be a scribe, somebody who could be educated. And so one of the ways that you could be completely left out of that opportunity was if you were left-handed or couldn't really write with your right hand. And so, and again, this is in the Western world, because we write from left to right. If it were right to left, it's different, top to bottom, bottom to top. But in the Western world, and in Europe, and then in the United States, this is what happened. So social practices were then created to stigmatize left-handed people. Now, I know we've got a good amount of left-handed people. We're just going to come back in just a minute. Here we go, 20% at least, or so. And that turned the mismatch of using an imperfect tool, which is the reed pen, and the act of writing into a disability. So a lot of these things persist. Sinister, the Latin term for the word left, means evil. So all of you sinister left-handers. It was also considered possibly a sign of being a witch during the Salem witch hunting season, which is gladly over. And on the screen you'll see a painting of an examination of a witch from the 19th century, looking at her. Gauche, the French word meaning left, is awkward or lacking of grace, is what we've come to say that in the English language. And the idiom 2 left feet connotes someone who's clumsy. Now, if I had 2 right feet, I would also be just as clumsy as someone with 2 left feet, right? But that's how we've kind of come to think about those things. It's kind of insidious. And so I want to talk about the schooling context, and I'm pulling in a colleague of mine from Cass to talk about that.
The schooling context for left-handedness. So I know the schooling context for left-handedness personally very well, and I also know from that context that correcting individual differences can really fail. I started my schooling in preschool with a nun who really thought that left-handedness was really a disability that you needed to remediate, and I had to be pulled out of school halfway through the year because this teacher was using corporal punishment and other tactics to try and force me to be right-handed, and it failed. I'm still left-handed. It also had the consequence of making me very afraid of teachers for many years. I would walk into a classroom and I wouldn't think about what's the goal of the lesson or what's on the board. but is this person going to hurt me? And it also made me very adamant at getting much more of my learning from my peers than my teacher, because they seem to me a much better source of teaching. And so unsurprisingly, I ended up doing my work and research in peer-to-peer learning. But two things are interesting. One is that the context makes a huge difference in terms of who looks like they have a disability, right? Left-handedness is very different today than it was even then. And the other real lesson is we're so much better off trying to change the design, because trying to change individuals often fails and has pretty negative consequences in terms of how those individuals can participate in the learning environment.
Yeah. So that ballpoint pen changed the world. And or the ballpoint pen changed the world. Because what happened was now the mismatch of the bad tool actually changed what the perception was of who was disabled or not. So the ballpoint pen, invented in the late 19th century, was originally made to actually cut leather, but was used then as a kind of the tail was making it into a ballpoint pen. And the tools available finally caught up with the needs of the user. And I just ran across on X a couple years ago, actually, and pulled this. This is what happens when you put the right tools in the hands of the user. So it says, some things my boyfriend has said since I gave him left-handed scissors for Christmas. Come through and watch me cut this. Do you need me to cut something for you? Is this what cutting things has been like for you this whole time? And I can cut anything. What joy, right? What excitement that there is if you just have the right tools, which means, you know, what's accessible. I keep hearing him periodically exclaim, "Oh my gosh," from another room in the past few days, and it's just him successfully cutting stuff. What joy there is. So in your tables, one more question. Can you relate? Is there something like that? I'm 6 feet tall, and Japan is not entirely friendly to 6 feet tall people, women. And so I found myself hitting my head quite a bit in Japan, and it wasn't quite designed for me. I had also broken my ankle, so I had a cane when I was walking through there. And so I found that there were a lot of things that weren't quite designed for me. It's beautiful and lovely and very rural and rustic, you know, but that was tough with a broken ankle and so large. So in your table groups, have you had any experience of something that's just not designed to work for you? And left-handers, play it up. This is your time to shine. Okay. I hate to bring these conversations to a close. How many of you had at least 2 different examples in your table of things that weren't designed well? Okay, great. Yeah, we all struggle. That's the point, is that there's often times where it doesn't work for us. And one more lens I'm going to put onto this is that intersectionality, because if it's not one thing, it's another, right? And so intersectionality is the interconnected, as you can see, nature of social categorizations like race, class, gender, that create overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. And we may not notice these things, but they often will pile up. And so I've got a couple examples, and I'm specifically thinking about women with, in this case, ADHD, and how those 2 overlapping things can make it more difficult.
What we know. ADHD in women is typically more severe than it looks. Symptoms are external manifestations of internal struggles. So if we have a primarily inattentive presentation and we're taught to mask our struggles, we're not going to look as ADHD as we actually are. And this isn't just true for women. Anyone who's faced strong social and cultural pressures to be good is likely to mask and internalize their ADHD symptoms. And this is true for autism as well. We may minimize how much we're struggling. According to research, women tend to underreport their symptoms, while men tend to overreport. And if we've developed comorbid anxiety or depression or other mental health conditions, those are likely to be more obvious than our ADHD. Because of this, we're more likely to self-diagnose, aka be the first to recognize that we might have ADHD, and we might be more afraid to go to the doctor to get checked out, especially if we've been dismissed or misdiagnosed before. This is why I recommend going to doctors who specialize in ADHD or who are really familiar with it. And remember that whether it's ADHD or it does turn out to be something else, if you're struggling, there's a reason you're struggling. Our struggles being invisible to others doesn't mean they're imaginary. Also, it's just as important to get the support we need. While our struggles might not be as obviously problematic in the short term, maybe we're doing well in school, maybe we're not getting in trouble a lot, the long-term issues women with ADHD face are significant.
That's a great channel called How to ADHD. This young woman has done fantastic videos, especially if you know someone who is a woman with ADHD. This is a really, really great channel that I like to share. But it can also, we can look at intersectionality as well in a lot of different ways. And these are the students I want you to think about who are in your classes right now.
It takes a lot of effort to appear like the way I do right now. Like, it takes a lot of conscious awareness. Social skills are like a muscle for us.
People will often say to me, "Oh, you're so high functioning, I would never know you had autism unless you said something." And I say, well, you don't live inside my skin, and you don't know how hard it is for me sometimes just to get through a day.
It's very, very draining. Even with people that I care for or enjoy being around, I have to psych myself up to be around them.
All the little things that everyone does unconsciously, autistic people do manually, so that adds up. What I'm doing with every part of my body, I am to some degree aware of and trying to do.
A lot of women that I know who are autistic are not diagnosed until their 20s, 30s, or even beyond. A large part of this is because the way that we diagnose autism is by using criteria that were created observing boys. And autism looks different in girls and women than it does in boys.
People don't expect to see someone that looks like me or my 2 youngest children who are on the spectrum also. We know that anyone can, be on the spectrum.
I didn't become aware of Asperger's until I was already an adult. At the time, finding a doctor was really difficult because there were people that were like, oh, women don't have that. And then there were other people that were like, well, you're too high functioning.
I was in my early 30s when I was diagnosed myself. After my children were, I don't think I would have been otherwise. Women are underdiagnosed, Black women especially, and I think there's also this idea of, the strong Black woman, you kind of have to hold down the family and be able to just keep going and not address, your, whatever needs that you have, your support needs, not prioritize self-care. We just kind of slip through the cracks through the majority of our lives.
So, UDL and intersectionality, I think, are really great lenses for us to put on this, because it acknowledges that the barriers are outside the person, that are to the person, they're not within the person. And UDL-informed practices are about intentionality and anticipating variability, and intersectionality considers the unique circumstances and barriers that may emerge as a result of identity intersections. So we want to honor the various identities and generate a supportive and empowering educational environment. And that's what we're doing by heightening awareness and understanding. So I had a great conversation with Dania Guadalupe Bradshaw out at, in California. And there's a great episode, 93, about that lens of intersectionality and UDL, if you want to learn more about that. So what does it look like, though, in the college student in your classes? And for this, I asked my daughter, this is my daughter Emma. How many of you had students named Emma? It was before Ross and Rachel named their daughter Emma. But here she is, and this is what it looks like in the college student. So here she is studying in her senior year, taking physics, and she's using an iPad there to do some of her physics homework. And yeah, I just was, now you know she's really doing it. There's no ChatGPT. This is 2 years ago. Anyway, so here she is. And so let's look at what those layers are. The first is that she's a woman in STEM, and biology is pretty popular for young women, but some of the other areas, she was one of the few women in the class in a college that was more women than men. So that's fine, but every once in a while, it got to be a little bit intimidating for her. So that was one level. The second thing is that you can't tell about looking at anybody, is that she has a chronic disease. She has Crohn's disease, chronic illness, and that means that she needs to get infusions every 8 weeks. And those had to be set up with the insurance and with the clinic 30 minutes away from her college, and we had to get insurance to go out of state to do that. And so she didn't know her class schedule before she had to schedule the next one, and it was going to be during her physics class. And so I said, well, what are you going to do? Does the professor have the notes available for you? No. Does the professor have the slides that you can get to beforehand? No. Will they Zoom you in? No. All of these barriers. And this is outside of her control. And so she said, I guess I'm just going to have to go in and talk to the professor afterwards, or I'll get the notes from somebody else. And she was very, wanted to stay on top of things. And that was difficult because it was beyond her control. And then add to that, let's get rid of that, that she's also neurodivergent with anxiety and ADHD. So she didn't want the very first thing to do in the first week of the semester and say, hi, professor, I have a problem, and I'm going to have to miss your class. I'm going to have to make these arrangements, and I need to, I'm the problem, is what that would be. Instead, she wanted to be, I'm ready to learn. I'm here. I'm going to be a great student. I'm ready. But because of some of these circumstances, that made it more difficult. And finally, I don't know if you noticed, she's left-handed. I mean, what are you going to do? So that's what happens, and it results in friction. And what we can do is start designing so that we don't have so many layers of that friction. So there we've done it. We've done 2 out of 3. We are on the move, okay? And we're doing great. So the second part is the what. We looked at the environment, and we need to conceive of that environment, about how we make that environment, or how we conceive of the environment through intersectionality, and then also what tools do we have available, how do we make it accessible, because those things that we don't provide can be barriers for our students that we didn't even realize might be barriers. Okay, are you ready? Yeah, are we ready for the how? This is the big part. This is like the wow. I'm so excited about this part. This is the how. How are we going to promote well-being of each other? So I'm going to go back to this slide and go into the second part, which is how we create that environment. So we've already conceived of the environment. We want to have a place where everybody can grow, where everybody can show their great strengths, where everybody can demonstrate what they've learned, where you also feel comfortable as the faculty member as well. It works for faculty, staff, and students. How are we going to create that environment? So when we help those students that I just mentioned, the neurodivergent students, we're also helping many of the other students with these interventions and creating this well cared for environment that have different preparedness, backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, other invisible disabilities, all those things that you said early on. Because what we want to do is reduce that friction, but not rigor. That's a big misconception about UDL. It sounds like you're just gonna dumb down your curriculum, you're gonna make it easy, you're gonna do it all for them. No, that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is taking away barriers so the students can actually do the work you want them to do. All of that friction for my daughter was so that she couldn't actually get into the physics. She wanted to do the physics. That's the part she wanted. All of the problem was getting into doing the physics. So that's what we want to do, is reduce friction, not rigor. So again, our basic principles of UDL, the why, the what, and the how, the 3-column table. This is what we're putting on now. And we're going to now pair those with, ta-da, the TEF. I'm so excited about this. So I'm going to go through just kind of one in each category. So there's 9 categories. I'm going to pick one that's going to directly relate to one of your TEF interventions or strategies and show you how those things relate. Your TILT team has done an amazing job writing out all of these things to give you a framework to understand like what's going to help, I want to make an inclusive environment. Well, you've got a bunch of things that you can do. And the thing is, these 2 different areas really vibe, as my kids say. They vibe well. They work together to really help all of our students. So we're going to take our UDL and then our teaching effectiveness framework, because I've figured that if we do that, it's very careful, meaning full of care, careful teaching. And that's how we're going to create that environment. That's the how. That's fulfilling our purpose of care and service for our students, for ourselves, for each other. And so I just thought it is UDL plus TEF equals love. Careful teaching. I want to make a sticker. Okay, so, and that's the handout on your table, the one that I made that's only a back and front, that's cardstock, is what we'll be going through now for the rest of the quick talk, which is just, hey, how does this work? Now that you have the concepts down, what does it mean to infuse UDL in your classroom? And how does it relate to the TEF framework? And that's what we're going to go through, the next 9. And they're in order. So the top left corner is welcoming interests and identities. So again, there are plenty. I could have chosen so many from your TEF. But for this one, I looked at addressing biases, threats, and distractions. And one technique is inclusive growth mindset language. Use that in your syllabi. So the first thing your students are seeing is that they are capable, they can do this. Use that in your assignment instructions. Use it in your classroom discussions. And that comes from the student motivation domain. And specifically, it says promote growth mindset and student resilience. And for that, I bring in one of the interviews I did with Tracy Addy, who talks about how you can do that. And the QR code for the whole episode is on your handout.
So students can actually see that there are kind of structures in place and it's well organized, that it's leading them onto this journey, right, so that they can be successful in the course. We want to get away from these deficit or lack of, fixed mindset type things that students can't do this, some students can't do this. Yeah, we're having a growth mindset here, right, in this course that you can get better at writing, you can improve this, etc. You'll learn more about this. And so incorporating that type of language is also a great thing to building a more inclusive syllabus and a more inclusive course very early on.
So she's written a book, by the way, and this conversation is a lot about inclusive instructors. So if you want to go further and you're like, that's the thing I'm going to take away from this 2-day session, is I want to work on my syllabus, or I want to work on welcoming students. That's a great example. Look at the student motivation part of TEF, but that's UDL-backed principles that helps with, it's taking away biases and distractions. So like if students think, I'm not good at math, we need to counter that. That's a fixed mindset into, anybody can do math. Like, look at this. Nobody knew, not everybody knew the answer of 0 when I looked at averages, right? And we're adults here. We would think we might know math. I'm kidding about that. So
students can.
The second thing, so now going down on your, on the 3-column table, so you can have that next to the other one if you would like. So the next area is about sustaining effort and persistence. And for this one, again, green is always engagement and motivation. For this one, I thought a great tool is offering feedback, lots of feedback, action-oriented feedback. But what if you have over 50 students in your class? How many of you have large classes? Over 50? How about over 100? Okay, do I have something for you? And this works for small classes too. But when my colleague Lindsay talked about this, I said, this is absolutely fantastic. How are you going to give feedback to such a large class? And this is a tiered feedback method. I'll let Lindsay explain it here. Because she has a class, it's psychology, and a class of over 100 students.
I'll say that I do related to feedback is I use a tiered feedback system. So for every assignment that they do, every single person in my class, and I have 100 of them at a time, they get rubric feedback, which is just built into our learning management system. We use Moodle. So I use their rubric feature. So I can go through and just click, and that gets them some quantitative feedback. I also have areas where I can type in, a little short qualitative feedback, and I have a nice reference document of common problems, so it's not really that time intensive for me to cut and paste. So everybody gets that, and that's called level 1 feedback. After they get that feedback, they know that if they don't know how to get better, given the quantitative and the qualitative level 1 feedback, all they have to do to me is say, hey, Dr. Maslin, I want level 2, and that's available for all assignments. What level 2 is I open up their assignment, whatever it is, in like Word, and I annotate it using the comment feature. So I go line by line. This did get you points here, this didn't get you points here, I would change this next time to give them that really detailed feedback. The benefit of doing that is because honestly, I'd rather always give that much detailed feedback for every student, but I have 100 of them. It's not possible. So what this does is it matches my level of effort to the students who actually want that feedback and who have said, yes, I want it, I will use it. That's level 2. And then level 3 is after you get level 2, you still don't know, then we come into the office, we sit down, we make a plan. How are we going to do this different next time? And so I'll say, 100% of my students get level 1, about 20 request level 2 each time, 20%, and maybe 1 or 2 request level 3. So I found that to be a really good way to match my effort to their need. And they feel that sense of agency and that they're getting to choose what their feedback looks like, and they talk about that in my evaluations as something that's beneficial to them.
I found, I should say, I wish I had found out about that when I was first starting to teach art history to 110 students, and I assigned research papers, and I spent a month grading these 15-page research papers for 100 students. And I handed them out like the last day of class because I finally got through them, right? And it's the last day of class, and these were the night lectures at a state school in New York. And it was 3 hour long, and I'm doing a little top hat and cane kind of presentation every time to keep them awake. And I handed them out, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I finally got those out to all the students. And I would see them walk up the auditorium where I was lecturing, and on the way out there was a giant trash can, and they would take those papers and go, and go out, and I thought, that was a waste. That was a complete waste of all of my time if they're not going to look at that feedback. And so matching the tiered feedback kind of idea can save you a lot of time and makes it flexible and matches you. Some of those students are going to want every word. Some of them are not. And so that's going to make your teaching life easier. The final one on that column on the bottom is about emotional capacity, which is my favorite. I've done several episodes on this, a lot of good stuff with intercultural communication. But in this case, it's individual and collective reflection. And in this case, I chose one about being a teacher and a teacher reflection log. And that's a really great way to think about what has worked, what hasn't worked, what you might change in the future. And that comes from your inclusive pedagogy domain to reflect on implicit bias and intercultural communication. And
you really have to think about where you can self-assess.
Here's Adam Nemiroff from Dartmouth.
And self-reflect about not only the biases that you might have, but also like what practices are you kind of falling into and doing, and how are those things contributing value. So I've talked a lot more recently with people about doing, say, like a teacher reflection log. So you might, as you're teaching a course, kind of reflect and debrief how certain activities go, what certain interactions happen, and that can be really helpful when you're in the thick of it. And then you can kind of come out of that and reflect on it a bit more intentionally.
Because these are great for us too, as university faculty and staff, to be thinking about that. Okay.
You really have to think.
Now, we've done engagement. Way to go. The last two columns, the first one is that purple one in the middle, and we're looking at designing options for perception. Again, lots of different things, but I chose one of them that I think will be helpful, which is represent a diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways, if ever you can. And so one of the ways I've done that is with a student survey. And I'll ask students with a Google form in the beginning of the semester a little bit about themselves, and then they don't know that, but I end up weaving some of those things in throughout the semester. So there's a link to the survey form that I use, so if you want to use that, you may do that. Copy and change whatever you would like. And that relates to the classroom climate, TEF domain, and connecting content to lived experience, a variety of students. And so we read an article that references Stephen Colbert and learning and failure. And so I asked them about who's your favorite comedic host, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, all of the kind of the late night, it's where everybody gets their news now, apparently, if you're under 25. And so I asked him about, so I know how many people are kind of in tune to these folks, and then what I can weave in. I used to ask about if they were Hufflepuff or Gryffindor. I've left that off now for the last several years. But I ask about Star Wars, Star Trek. Where are they on a couple of things so that I can bring some of those things in. I also will ask about, do they have a job? Are they working more than 20 hours a week during the school year? How flexible do I need to make sure our assignments, our deadlines and things like that are? So that's something that's easy to do, and then you can decide to use which parts that might be helpful. And then the thing is, I show them the anonymized data, and they'll say, hey, look at how many of you came from a school of over 1,000 in your graduating class, and how many of you had under 20, so that they know they're not alone, right? That they've come to this new place and that they're like other people there too. Or that how many of you have a job? Oh, look, there's like half of you that have a part-time job while you're here too. So I'll show them that anonymized data as well, so that they can see, like I'll have 3 or 4 sections, and so they're seeing themselves reflected in that. The second, right in the middle of your 3-column table, is about language and symbols. And this is the one where I illustrate through multiple media. That's what we're doing all the time here. That's how you make things accessible. So creating resources in multiple media, and for that I bring in Tom Thibodeau. It connects to your curriculum and curricular alignment using a variety of course materials like text, video, and simulation games.
We cannot continue to use the same techniques that we were instructed with and what we have used in the past, simply because the world has changed. And it's no longer a fact-based, knowledge-based economy where, you can get the answer to anything you want in Google in, 15 seconds or less. So we have to really help our students to develop those 21st century skills of being able to work with each other, being able to communicate with each other, and be able to find the resources that they need to solve the problems that they're faced with.
So I was really upset when we stopped using the abacus, weren't you? it's that kind of thing. We have moved on. The way that I was taught art history was dry and boring, but I loved it though. But it's still dry and boring for a lot of our students. So having a lot more videos or explainers or things than just a slide projected where the hum of the slide projector turns everyone asleep. And building knowledge, the last one. Building knowledge, designing options for that. And I chose cultivating multiple ways of knowing and making meaning. Because some of these, it's like a bit daft, as the Brits would say. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? So that's why I'm trying to give you an actual example of what each one of these is. And for that, it's varied learning activities. Now, this is different than resources. This is not just, okay, do you have a text or a podcast or an accessible PDF? Now it's like, they come into class, are you lecturing the whole time? Do you have polls that they can participate in? Are they talking in a group? That's the are they doing a case study example? Do you give them a table to fill out that they're trying to work on something together? Those are the different learning activities about how they're going to chew on that information, those resources that you give them. And that connects to the instructional strategies of using a variety of teaching methods and modalities and allowing time for metacognition. And for that, I have another podcast guest, Kevin Gannon, to talk about what he does in his history class.
From the outcomes of the course all the way to the things we do on an everyday basis in my online course, how are students creating their knowledge? I don't want to be the knowledge dispenser, because otherwise we could just hand them a textbook and sit them in front of YouTube videos and say, call us in 4 years and we'll give you your degree, right? So clearly there's something else that has to happen there. So how am I making a space where students are the active agents of their own learning? How are they not just creating their own knowledge, but understand how and why they're doing so, and given the opportunities to reflect on that so that they are adding these sorts of cognitive or metacognitive tools to their toolbox. And they know what those tools are and they know how they might use them in different circumstances.
So a variety of methods is very helpful. Finally, the last column is going to go really quick. Design options for interaction. That includes optimizing access to accessible materials in your learning management system. And that also relates to instructional strategies using accessible learning technology. And why should we do it? Because we care, because it's ethical. I bring in Anne Gagne, who is a fantastic voice, an advocate for accessibility, because it matters, because it's important, not because we have to, but that too.
So there's a lot of things that I really encountered, I think, in that time that made me really think, like, these are shared needs, right? Like, this is a widely shared need. And so that kind of comprehensive understanding of access really became foundational to my pedagogical practices, like my pedagogical ethics, the way that I taught. And then more recently now in the roles that I've had as like the instructional designer, curriculum consultant, and now as an educational developer. So I guess the long and the short is that basically accessibility is important to me because ethics is important to me.
Because we don't want to leave those students out that we didn't realize we might be leaving out previously. So we do it because we care and we want to create that environment and community. And finally, the expression and second to last, expression and communication, building fluencies with graduated support for practice and performance, and that's your transparent assignment design. Marianne Winklemas is the
transparent approach.
The leader for that. And I have this twice, actually, for its presenting information that makes sense in a sequence to scaffold lessons and activities to support students. And that is to give your students the best understanding of the assignment.
All the students we studied, a statistically significant amount, and it benefited underserved students even more. And to me, this was a way of using a tool that brings all the students to a closer to equal level of readiness before they start doing a particular assignment. To sort of bring folks to the same starting line of understanding about what's the background knowledge you need, how do you understand what you'll be learning, and how you'll be learning it, and how will you know when you're learning it if your learning is effective?
This is a twofer because this is exactly talked about in the inclusive pedagogy. This is actually mentioned. So I recommend Tilt highly. And finally, the last thing is about designing options for strategy development. And one of the ways is enhancing the capacity for monitoring progress. This technique is regular check-ins with students, but what does that look like? That's part of feedback and assessment, using classroom assessment techniques to check for understanding and be willing to diverge from your teaching plan. And I'm ending with this, knowing that you have a kindness lounge outside. And that kindness lounge is being kind to yourselves and others. And this is how it translates into your teaching. I interviewed Kate Denial, who wrote The Pedagogy of Kindness. And this is her talking about how to do that with your students.
I am also going to have like little drop-in evaluations throughout the term where I'm like, it's week 3, how's it going? How are your other classes going? You know, what's the workload like? How are you balancing things? Where do you need some help and some support to be able to make this work for you? So I will probably do that a couple times during my 10-week term, just to get their feedback, and then I can adapt and be flexible and change according to what I hear from them. So their experience, again, of their own educational experience is so important. And I think if I just sailed through the term without ever asking them, is this working? Is it working across all of your classes or not? You know, I think that would be a terrible idea.
Some of these will work for you if you have 150 people. That may not be the exact technique you're going to use. But I'm hoping that at least 1 or 2 of these things is going to ring a bell for you and be helpful. So that's the how. The final part is promoting the well-being of each other, which is the UDL and TEF interventions. And continuously use this design cycle. Think about what those barriers are, grab some UDL and TEF interventions, try it out, revise, and do it again next semester. That's the whole design process. So, one final thing as we close. Remember that pilot that I showed you? That's my son. Yeah, so, but he had ADHD as well. We're quite the neurodivergent family, I'll tell you that. And so my first time ever to Denver, Colorado, and Fort Collins was 3 years ago when we had to get a neuropsych evaluation for my son so that he could pass a first-class medical with the FAA administration. Because he had a diagnosis as ADHD and at some point had taken medication for that, he could not be a pilot until he had been to a neuropsych eval. And the only one in the country who could do it was in Laramie, Wyoming. And and so in May, it was 3 years ago this week, I came and we drove from Denver and got the only spot that was available because somebody canceled. And he wouldn't have been able to start college that August because he needed his first class medical and still needed to go through the FAA. And so I took him to the evaluation, and he passed with flying colors, but that still didn't mean the FAA was going to take it. So it went through the FAA. I'd hired consultants and what to do to get him through. June 12th, I got the call that the FAA approved him. So he got his first class medical, so yay. And since then, this, by the way, in the 4th grade, we're in North Carolina, so the Wright brothers, that's him with the bowler hat, and his still best friend from till today. And this is when we got a chance to go to Hong Kong, and he got to sit in the front of a giant jetliner when I went and gave a talk over there on UDL. So it was quite harrowing to go through that. But here he is, having passed his private pilot's license, and here he is with his instrument rating, and here he is flying. Notice he has his Think UDL pin on his lapel. Very excited about that. And then I've highlighted one of his Instagram comments, which is his sister, that neurodivergent left-hander. who says, yeah, that's cool, IG, I guess. You can't be too proud of your own brother or anything like that. But I'll have you know that he's actually at the top of his class. He's the first to get to his ratings from his entering class. And he's the president of the Alpha Eta Rho. And he just ran for the national president of all of the country and lost to the incumbent. But he's hyper-focused, right? So what was considered a deficit was actually his greatest strength. And then put in the right environment, you will fly. And it's awesome. So he took me on a flight the last time we were here. So here we are flying together. And that's really hard when you have changed a diaper and this guy has your life in your hands, right? That's tough. So it's worth it. That's all I'm saying. It's worth it. It's worth it being flexible. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single shift. You're doing it already. I appreciate it. And you've been UDL'd. And what you see on here is everything I did in this presentation on the engagement column, on the representation column, and the action and expression that I put into this presentation so that you have an experience as UDL. Boom! Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lillian, and we're eager to talk with you more. We're also very conscious of our time right now. We have just 5 minutes until our breakouts start. So what I'd like you to do is write down your questions, because I'm sure that some of you have questions. So we would love to come back to those, and we'll see if we can't work that in during our lunch hour. So we have, if you recall, we have one cancellation for our breakout sessions. That was going to be in room 312 with enhancing faculty success and well-being because Jen Dars is ill today. So we have 3 other options, and one of those is virtual. So encourage you to either go to 304/306 or 308/310 or attend the virtual session. Then we will resume at 11:45 for lunch in here in the theater. We will have a variety of things that go on, and we will try to integrate some of your questions at that point. So if you don't mind, take just a moment, write down your questions, and then skedaddle off to the room that you need to be at. And let's thank Lillian one more time for her presentation. Yeah, we'll do that. And folks, too, in addition to the Q&A during lunch that we will do, and Lillian just assured us that she's happy to do that, don't forget that we have a workshop tomorrow. And so Lillian will be back hands-on, working, helping us work through some ideas. So, keep that in mind as well. And meanwhile, off with you. Go off and find your breakout session. Grab yourself something to drink. And thank you. We'll see you back here in about an hour.